Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. We are going to start in exactly 2 minutes. Let's give our colleagues at some 2 minutes or 3 minutes there to join. So we are going to start in exactly 3 minutes. A very good afternoon to you all, ladies and gentlemen. Bon après-midi. Habari za mchana. It is my distinct honor to welcome you to this commemorative International Women's Day commemorative webinar. Let me begin by saying Happy New Year. I know we're almost done with Q1, but as the Women Lawyers Committee, this is our first gathering this year. So Happy New Year and karibuni sana. My name is Angela Munga Mwadumbo. I have the distinct honor of serving you as the chair of the East Africa Law Society Women Lawyers Committee. And we are in March, and March is a significant month for women because it is dedicated to honoring women's contribution to history, culture, and the society at large. And of course, on 8th of March is a very big day for all of us women because it is International Women's Day. So let us big ourselves up for the good job that we are doing, because I know every woman out there is doing a good job. Let us take this opportunity to wish each other a Happy Women's Day well in advance. We know it is the 5th, but this is when we are having this commemorative webinar. So karibuni sana. Before we get into the topic, I'd like us to have some ground rules. I want us to have a very interactive session. So the comment section is there for that. You can post your observations, comments, reactions in real time. You can also greet us and tell us where you are tuned in from. And of course, wish yourself, wish all of us a Happy Women's Day. So for questions, we are going to have a plenary session after all the speakers have spoken. But if you don't want to forget your question, please post it in the Q&A section, because sometimes if you post it on the comment section, we might miss it. So if you have a question, just post it on the Q&A section. Then just to remind you that this session is also being streamed live on our Facebook page, that is at the East Africa Law Society, and also on YouTube, and the handle is East Africa Law Society. You can also follow us on all our socials. On X, it is East Africa Law Society, in brackets ELS, and on LinkedIn, it is East Africa Law Society, in brackets official. So with that, our topic today is in line with this year's Women's Day theme, which is Give to Gain. What must women lawyers give in order to gain power, purpose, and progress? This theme emphasizes generosity, reciprocity, and collective advancement of women as some of the pathways towards gender equality. To break down this topic, we have an eminent panel of speakers. We have senior counsel and advocates who are well versed in this topic, and they are all powerhouses in their own right. So they are going to break down this topic in 4 pillars, 4 very strategic pillars. The first one will be giving opportunity. The second one will be giving visibility. The third one will be giving care. And the fourth one will be giving innovation. I don't even want to say much, because I am also really looking forward to the speakers. We are going to start with Miss Florida Kabisanga, all the way from Kigali, Rwanda. Miss Florida is a highly accomplished human rights lawyer with over 2 decades of experience in prosecution, strategic litigation, and public interest law. She is the founder and executive director of SATA Foundation and leads the law firm SATA Law Chambers, where she has provided pro bono services in sexual and reproductive health rights and gender-based violence cases. Ms. Kabisanga holds an LLM in international human rights law from Indiana, USA, and an LLB from Makerere University in Uganda. She has also received advanced training from prestigious institutions, including the University of Pretoria, Erasmus University, and the Harvard Law School. Her international exposure is extensive, having served at the United Nations International Criminal Tribunal for Rwanda, and she has also represented clients at the Kigali International Arbitration Center. She is an accomplished speaker in international criminal and humanitarian law. She is fluent in Kinyarwanda, English, and Kiswahili, and has inspired countless advocates through capacity building programs across East Africa. So, Ms. Florida, talk to us about giving opportunity and building the future female talent pipeline. Over to you, Ms. Florida.
Thank you so much, Angela, for organizing this, and thank you to ELS for inviting us to be part of this conversation. Angela, as the chair of the women lawyers at the ELS, you've been doing an amazing job, and I just wanted to start off with that to commend you.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
And I'm very privileged to be part of an esteemed panel, including longtime friends like Fiona in Uganda. And I'm glad this conversation is going around our region, because I think we can all contribute something positive and learn from each other. So on this, as this is just purely a conversation where we exchange ideas and talk about our own experiences, I would like to, first of all,
we have lost you, Miss Florida, or is it my internet. Mariam, can you hear Florida?
No, I
Back,
can't.
sorry.
She's back now.
Yeah, yes, you're back now.
I apologize. I had to switch Wi-Fi. When we talk about building the future female talent pipeline and providing opportunities, I think the first conversation we need to have is about who is the talent that we're actually nurturing. Over the life of a girl child, over the life of a female lawyer, you have different seasons in life. And those different seasons require different influences and different experiences for us to get to the point where you're now part of a pipeline in a professional environment. And this is something that I would like people to understand, that you don't wake up one day and become an amazing talent that everyone is trying to give an opportunity to. It doesn't mean that you grow up, you get to college, and that is when you start nurturing your expertise and becoming part of a pipeline that that is talented and that people can nurture and help to groom and to help succeed. And in doing this, in talking about this, I really want people to understand that a girl child, to succeed in life, it starts all the way from childhood. What do I mean by that? If a child does not have an experience that is nurturing when they're young, if a child does not become confident as a child in their capacities, in their abilities, then already they're starting from a point which is disadvantaged. So when we have girl kids, when they're young, as parents, and I am not talking to mothers only, but even fathers and others that are in spheres of influence over this child's life, must be extremely mindful and intentional in how they help these kids grow in themselves, in their confidence, in reaffirming their capacities and talents. When you are in an environment of, in a workplace, when you're an employer, you start from having to deal with things that were not dealt with by the responsible people. For example, teachers, for example, parents, for example, guardians, for example, people who are supposed to mentor the girl child through the different stages of their lives. You start having to deal with those issues in the workplace. And that means that the talent that doesn't have that great background, that great experience, is already coming from a disadvantage. And I'll give you an example. If as a mother, you have a girl child and all you keep saying is criticism, you can't do this well, you're not good at this, you're not good at that, already you're killing the confidence of that child. So when they grow up, they are not, unless something drastically changes during their lifespan when they're growing up to take up professionalism, you're already killing the self-confidence and the capacity for them to thrive in the work environment. So as parents, as teachers, we must always be mindful to build up girl children. Only today I was having a conversation with a fellow female lawyer here in Kigali, where she was wondering why out of 1,600 plus female lawyers in Rwanda, you have just about 300 female lawyers. And many of them come into the profession, but they end up falling by the wayside for different reasons. But when you talk about building systems and pipelines for talent in the professional environment, you have to see the whole of a person. You can't, for example, expect the background of the girl children not to affect their capacity to come into a bar association, for example, and take up leadership positions in whatever professional environment they find themselves in, whether they become, in-house counsel, whether they're going to become partners in law firms and all of that. their background matters. I have had a lot of time when I'm in an employer's capacity, where I am dealing with a lot of past traumas from my colleagues that I think can be avoided if we look at nurturing all the way from the beginning. So when you talk about seasons in a girl child's life, talk about their childhood, which requires the people in their lives, as I've said, to try and nurture them, to nurture their confidence, to reaffirm their capacities in order for them to be built up for the future. In order for them, when they get into that environment, they are comfortable enough to receive mentorship and to be able to thrive and take up leadership positions. So after childhood, the next stage obviously is in young adulthood. When you want somebody to take up leadership positions in the future, you do not actually start planning that when you're already like at, in law school, when you're already in the work environment. You have to be able to start planning in young adulthood, during secondary school studies, to plan the future of what you want to be and to start looking into mentorship. Yes, it is true that leaders must put in place systems to be able to help women and girls get into leadership positions and have a pipeline where you can get talent from women. But that doesn't mean that the women themselves and the girl children don't have a role to play. And that means that if, for example, you have to what qualities does one look at when they're trying to nurture and groom leaders in the work environment? And do you have those qualities? How are they being built into you from the beginning, from the time you're in high school, for example, in your O levels? Young people, I think I've spoken to AELS a couple of times to tell people that you must absolutely always have a plan of where you want to go, of where you want to end up in life. And if you don't have that, you're literally planning not to succeed. So in young adulthood, that is when you start looking at what you want to be in the future and how can you get there, how can you achieve and become the leader of tomorrow. And that means you start looking into role models. And those role models become extremely important in whether you succeed or you don't. So in this stage of life of a girl child, there are people that are absolutely key to their success in the future. Among them, obviously you have like teachers who are supposed to be encouraging girls to tell them that, look, you can literally do anything that the men can do. In 2026, we are still talking about women being afraid to go into certain rooms, being afraid to do certain professions. And I really honestly feel that this is a question of society not affirming, not building up girl children while doing that for the boys, telling them they are leaders, they are capable of doing a lot. But in our environments, wherever we meet girl children, whether we meet them as coaches for sports, whether we meet them as teachers in certain in the sciences, we must absolutely, already build them up to take up leadership positions. Because by the time you get into the profession, by the time you get into that pipeline, you must already have certain qualities. Not everybody can become a leader if they're not nurtured. Of course, there's, Trojan horses who are able to do it despite their circumstances, but that's the very, very few. The people who actually eventually get to leadership positions, to those pipelines of the 1% that succeed to become the who is who, the influencers in certain professions, those are people that have been nurtured from childhood, that have been, reaffirmed, that have been given all the opportunities to succeed, the tools that are needed to succeed. But we must also be mindful that in order for us to be part of that pipeline and the systems that I'll talk about soon, you must be mindful that as women, as girls, there is a period of our lives where we must absolutely sacrifice to be part of the 1%. Nothing is given to us on a silver platter, so we must work hard as much as anybody who is in those rooms that we want to enter. But we are unique. We are, Mariam, is it possible for you to mute?
Wait.
Okay. So, Mariam, if you can hear me, can you mute your mic, please?
Hi.
Mine is muted.
Okay, I don't know, you're on there twice.
Yeah, you have two devices.
So,
Man.
okay. So when we talk about,
I just
thank you. So when I talk about sacrifice, it's because in our lives, there are things that we face as women that are not faced by our brothers, by our husbands and others. We have seasons where we are, for example, we are mothers and we are wives and we are professionals all at once. And that requires a lot of sacrifice in terms of you're not going to have enough time to rest. You're not going to have enough time to do so many things that you would rather be doing, perhaps because others are enjoying a different season of their lives. But that is absolutely necessary to sacrifice and give up a lot during that period of our lives. And I think that is the period where we are in college and maybe when we are 10 to 15 years of experience in our professions. That means that you're going to have so many, to have full-time jobs, to have, to be able to have children who are young that need you absolutely, and then you're trying to build a career where you're a leader. I don't know how many countless times I've had women say that it's extremely tough during that period. Your children, they're very young and they need you. And at the same time, you know, you're building your career. There are things that you are responsible for in the home. I mean, you are a mother, you're a wife, you're a sister, you are a daughter, and all these things are pulling you in different directions. And in that season of sacrifice, we absolutely give of ourselves and suffer a lot. You need a lot of assistance during this period from partners, from siblings, from all these, and sometimes we don't have the luxury to actually ask for that help. But if you are in a position during this season to ask for help, please do. But this is a season that absolutely happens in our lives. And we have, in order to get into that pipeline, to be able to accept this season in our life. This is the season where the people who can't stand the heat actually fall on the wayside, unfortunately. But when that period passes, you get to the period where now you're in management, you're in decision-making positions, and that actually gives you the opportunity to be able to mentor other girls and create future leaders and create a pipeline and be able to have a say in creating policies and creating systems that actually nurture girls into future leaders. And in 2026, we actually have a lot of tools at our disposal where we can do a lot when we get to this position. And these systems include a lot of things. I mean, we understand what women and girls need during a period where they're young mothers, where they're working hard, where they're sacrificing. You can make that as a manager a lot easier by creating systems that actually help those women who are in the sacrifice stages of their lives to actually thrive. In 2026, we have a lot of tools, including the capacity to have policies that allow young mothers to work from home, to work remotely where they can be with their children. You can provide a space at the workplace where children, kids where colleagues that have young kids can actually come and leave their babies in Rwanda in government offices. Now we have ECDs where, you know, young mothers can actually come and leave their kids and be able to go and breastfeed during their breaks and all of that. Those systems are systems that we can actually be able to put in place as managers. And this, I honestly, I'm talking to women, but I think even men in management positions can actually have the opportunity and the intention to create these systems that allow women in different seasons of their professional lives to actually be able to thrive and succeed and be part of a leadership pipeline. But something else that I've been doing intentionally is to be able to mentor young women, not only in their professions, but also in other parts of their lives. Sometimes all it needs is for you to have a conversation, to give them a shoulder to lean on, and to be able to talk them through, because what they're going through is not something that is new. It's literally everything that we all go through as mothers and professionals. And also be able to have conversations with them to plan what I've been talking about, having 5-year plans of where they want to go professionally and in other parts of their lives. Part of the thing that you can do as a manager to create this pipeline and to encourage women to become future leaders is to actually talk them through what they can do to be able to succeed. One of the things that I've been doing for a while is to be able to talk them through what it takes to be a leader, what qualifications you need, what their passions are professionally, and what they can do to be able to be a future leader. Giving them opportunities is another thing that you can do to make sure they're part of it, and identifying talent. Sometimes I talk to some young women and they're telling me how excited they are to go into, for example, specializing in environmental law, and you talk to them, and eventually they come to the realization that perhaps that's not what they're extremely good at and what they can actually make a career out of. And a lot of them have gone on to do graduate studies. I've been able to show them how to apply for graduate studies, and how to position yourself in such a way that if you want to apply for a certain position, you actually will get into it, or you have at least a leg in above everybody else in the talent pool. So there are so many things that we can do.
Thank you, Florida. Wrap up just that thought so that we move on to the other pillar.
Actually, perhaps I'll leave room for questions later, because I realize I've used up a lot of time, but I think a lot of the thoughts that I wanted to pass across, I think I have. Thank you, Angela.
Karibu sana. We can give Florida Kabasinga a round of applause just virtually. Now we move on to the next pillar, and this is giving visibility. And Ms. Fiona Wall, Senior Counsel, is going to take us through this pillar. Ms. Fiona Wall, Senior Counsel, is an eminent advocate, commissioner for oaths, and chartered mediator. She holds a bachelor's degree in law, a diploma in legal practice, and an MBA in management. And she's also a former president of the Uganda Law Society, having taken this position between the year 2020 and 2022. She's a seasoned legal and governance expert, and she combines deep expertise in corporate law, energy, oil and gas, labor law, and company secretarial practice with hands-on experience in public and private enterprises. She has served on numerous boards, including the Zamara Retirement Fund, Fields of Life, and the East African Business Council, and has advised on high-profile contracts, including one that was valued at over 216 million euros. She's also the founder of Fidelis Leadership Institute, which nurtures ethical, accountable, and visionary leaders, and she has been recognized internationally, including as one of Africa's top 50 leaders. This was in 2020, and she was the recipient of the French-German Élysées Peace and Reconciliation Award. This she got in 2021. Today, she brings her wealth of experience to share insights on leadership, governance, and the rule of law. Specifically, she's going to talk to us about the pillar of giving visibility. That is, how can one move from mentorship to sponsorship and then to influence? Senior Counsel, over to you.
I would like to thank leadership of the African Law Society and you yourself, Angela, for allowing us to have a moment as women lawyers, as female lawyers. Here, Florida, Mariam, all my friends, region. Karibuni ladies. Today I'm just going to go through, I hope you can see my slides. Angela, could you confirm?
Yes, we can see your slides.
Okay, so we're talking today about what must women gain. Really, it have to come after Florida, and I must say that Florida has been one of mentally given me the courage. For those of you that don't know, I grew up in Florida in a district in Uganda somewhere. So she's over there in Rwanda, but some of us, regard her as one of us.
Miss Fiona, your audio is a bit, it's fluctuating. Your audio is fluctuating. Maybe a bit closer.
Yeah. So
Yes,
I was saying that
yes,
just
much
a live
better.
example, Frida is one of the people that encouraged me to leave government practice and get into private practice. So the practical example when she speaks about mentoring and investing in young people, we are not very far apart in age, but I love that she has invested in me in that way. I thought I'd give that credit. So the problem, we're speaking about visibility, and when you get visible, then you are able to sponsor. I want to emphasize that it is very hard to mentor or to sponsor or to influence unless you have been visible, unless you have something that people want. And unfortunately, a lot of women are modest. I'm not saying it's a bad thing, but I'm thinking it's one of the roads to visibility. So I wanted us to first look at the numbers, because I think as women of purpose, we need to be aware of the problem. And one of the things that men do that we rarely want to do is think numerically. So looking at the East African region, which has grown phenomenally, I was looking at who has the data on women lawyers. And I'm proud to say that while I was president ULS, the first thing we did was work with the International Bar Association and President, the late president. I recently wrote about him, the International Bar Association, President Moyo, who emphasized that they wanted to study gender dynamics in a bar association in Africa. So they picked Uganda, and there is a report of the Uganda Law Society, IBA report on Agenda Statistics 2020. I'm proud to say that having gone around last year looking for some position, I realized that the statistics have improved greatly. However, in Burundi, looking at this table, it just speaks about they do not have any data, which means the lawyers are not looking at this data, and neither is the judiciary. In Ethiopia, what I could find is that you see a lot of women lawyers, but in the federal courts, So they are attracted to judiciary and in-house counsel roles. So 33% in leadership roles across the board. In Kenya, 51% in the judiciary as of 2020.
Miss Fiona, again, back to your audio. We
Sorry,
can't hear you very clearly.
Okay. Is this better now?
Come again.
Is this better?
Yes, that's better.
Okay, I'm very sorry. Yeah, so I was saying that for Kenya, we have 51% in the judiciary. I think it hasn't changed much from 2021. And that the demographics of the court are very well documented across the East African region. And you can see that in the third column. But you'll see that when it comes to bar associations measuring progress and inclusion and leadership ratings for women, there's almost no data across the region except in a few countries, maybe like Rwanda, Uganda, and Kenya. So what do these facts tell us? I'll not dwell so much on that. I'll share the PowerPoint if anybody needs it. It's saying that we are half the juniors. In fact, in Kenya and Uganda, there are more ladies now than men that are going to law school and even coming out of law school. But the statistics show that much as we are half the juniors, much as we are more than half when it comes to student lawyers who are coming into the market, we are not even a quarter partner. We're not even a quarter. In fact, the majority of women lawyers across Africa have settled into in-house roles and NGO roles and other roles, which are not in any way less, but we're also looking at aspects of leading the profession. And private practice is also a place that would like to encourage women lawyers. So we've seen the barriers, of course, harassment, corruption, bias. And over here, our lived reality really speaks to this. Women lawyers have proven less, especially the judges, across the board. I found a lot of research showing that they've proven less, should I say less corrupt, but they also pay the price for corruption. We also see a lot of judicial corruption and old boy favoritism. I think we've seen this, the boys club. We've also seen how retaliation happens when people try, women, especially in various bar associations. I think we've had Kenya and Uganda. We've seen a lot of retaliation when women stand up to speak against sexual harassment. But we've also seen a worrying trend of older women facilitating some of these problems. And one of the biggest problems is really becoming a roadblock. You see women who have broken many ceilings, and then they sort of plug that hole and block other women from entering, sometimes not consciously, but sometimes in the things that they do. We need to understand that as women, first of all, the moment a woman gets power or gets to a place of influence, the spotlight is louder. So she is already visible. So the question is, what are you showing? Because whatever you do, unlike for a man, the next woman will be measured, will either fall to your failing or will rise to your success. So we need to realize that when we're talking about visibility and sponsorship, we have to be very deliberate about what is out there about that. So associations are not measuring. For me, seeing the ladies on this talk and the East African Law Society, we need to encourage our bar associations to measure and keep track of growth and also come up with deliberate policy. 2020, Uganda Law Society came up with an anti-sexual, 2019, an anti-sexual harassment policy, and we had law firms sign on it. I do not know how much progress that has brought, but we need to do some of these things again to make the issues of women visible. And I think that the aspect of visibility that affects our bar associations and in the judiciary. We need to look at our purpose. In order for you to grow your visibility, you have to embrace excellence. But excellence cannot just be excellence without purpose. You have to be clear in what you want out of your career, in everything that you're going to do. You need to be very, very clear and very, very intentional. I tell young people that when I was growing up, our public lives started when we went to the workplace. But because of social media, children's lives are beginning when the day they get a social media account. And most of them are on TikTok by 9 years old in East Africa on average. So you're already building your personal brand. But then as a young lawyer, as a leader, what is your purpose? And as a senior lawyer, what can they say about you? When someone speaks about you, what is clear? How are you leading? So you need to know your purpose. The aspect of excellence in performance, Florida has really emphasized that you need to stand out because we are judged more harshly. Much more is expected from us. In fact, the skills are very, very different. I've had a lot of women complaining when they're judged harshly, when they're lambasted, doing something that ordinary men do every day. But a woman cannot get away with it. And I keep saying, unfortunately, that's the standard right now. So what are we saying? We are saying that define what excellence and visibility is going to be for you. Are you going to be everywhere? Are you going to be visible everywhere? Or are you going to be in particular deliberate places because you're building that personal brand? Then the other aspect in giving to gain, Luke 6:38, I'm a Christian. That's an area I want to be visible in. It says, given it will be given, And the Bible also says that to whom much is given, much is expected. So as leaders, we need to be very strategic. We need to give, we need to have influence so that we can unlock spaces for ourselves and for those that are coming after us. We need to have purpose because purpose has indicators that show impact, indicators that show advancement. We cannot only sacrifice when we are trying to build this visibility, and we need to remember that it is an investment. It is an investment in sponsorship. You will not be able to sponsor anybody if you are not visible. So what do we give? We give time. We give vulnerability in telling our story, in sharing our lives, in mentoring, in letting people into our spaces, exposing ourselves. And what are we going to reap? We are going to reap, personally, every young lady that I've mentored, I'm hoping that if they meet my daughter one day, they'll have done better. When she was 4 years old, my daughter told me, I want to be the first female president of Uganda. And I told her, we have to wait that long. And she said, oh, Mom, with the way Uganda is going, you will have to wait that long. That was about 12 years ago. And unfortunately, we are still waiting. I think she was right. So I hope that we all understand that lifting up another woman is not just about them. We are starting a revolution. When Wangari Maathai was fighting her good fight, I'm sure she was one of those men that they speak about who plant a tree knowing that they might never enjoy a shade. So we need to think about legacy, the end from the beginning. If you're going to sponsor, if you're going to be visible, you need to be thinking about the legacy. What should they say about you? I always tell everybody, I want somebody to write on my graveyard, on my whatever, and say that she was faithful, she was available, she was teachable. And every organization that I've served on, I've wanted those values to be buried. So today I'm calling on each one that you need to understand, once you understand your purpose, once you understand your values, once you understand this calling to be visible in order to sponsor other women, you need to be faithful to that calling. You need to, it requires you to be, to have values and stick to them, to walk your talk. You need to be available. Availability means time. I've seen a lot of great women who do not have time for anybody else. When they get places of power, they don't have, they can't pick their calls. They can't come back to where they were working before to help. They cannot do basic things because, they're better now. And that is very, very sad. You need to find a way of pouring yourself out. Because when water is not going anywhere, just a swamp, it becomes a place that festers. So whatever knowledge, whatever great is poured into us, if it's only as useful as when we share it, and then we need to be teachable. It's not enough that you think you have arrived. It's not enough that you're visible. It's not enough that you're sponsoring. You need to keep learning. You need to keep learning because Albert Einstein said, if you stop learning, you stop believing. So they say that a good leader, and for me, I'm speaking today about women, and I'm saying great women know the way. So you need to understand that in this journey of visibility and sponsorship, you need to know what you're doing. You need to know why you're doing it. You need to know what you're going to do. And you need to know whom you're going to do it. And I love that among the panelists here, I have a lot of women that I have done a lot of things with purposefully. With Mariam, we're on the women owners of law firms. We call ourselves wolves. So, and we're intentional about this thing. So a leader knows the way. A good leader goes the way. If you're saying that you are sponsoring women, that you are raising women, how many are you employing? How many have you handed the baton to from your great spaces where you have sat? How many are you sponsoring? How many can testify that you have actually invested even an hour of your time in their lives? So go the way. If you're calling young women to have integrity, and that be seen in your life. If you're calling young women to be, not to, give their bodies out as favors, or to be impatient for success and pay some costly prices, I hope you're not doing the same. So you have to show the way. You have to be an example. You have to show the way. You have to find ways of being a thought leader, of speaking out, of teaching. Knowledge is power. A lot of young women do not have the resources to access some of this knowledge. That's why I thank ELF for things like this. And I'm hoping that we continue to not stop preaching this gospel, the gospel of working together, of collegiality, the gospel of being purposeful and strategic in fighting for women's needs. Focusing on legacy means that you will care on your past, will care about your present, that you will influence your lived experience. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Ms. Wall, Senior Counsel, for those insights. And we have been given a roadmap on how to be visible. I'm looking at the chat section. I can see we have people tuned in from Kwale County, that is in the South Coast in Kenya. We have people from Jinja, Kampala, Germany, Dar es Salaam. We are truly a global force, and this is truly a very timely conversation. So we'll move on to the next pillar, and that is giving care. And for this pillar, we shall be taken through this by none other than Ms. Mariam Babali, who is a lawyer, a strategist, a mental health advocate, who has spent nearly 2 decades addressing leadership challenges across law, business, and mental wellness. She's a managing partner at Kabuzire, Mbabali and Company Advocates, which firm provides legal solutions in family law, corporate governance, arbitration, and more. And she also serves as a senior member of FIDA, promoting women's rights and gender equality. She's also the founder of the Empathy Wheel, an initiative dedicated to raising awareness on mental health and fostering resilience in workplaces and communities. Her academic credentials include a master's in financial management, a diploma in trauma and mental health, and specialized training from Harvard Law School. Beyond the legal practice, she's an entrepreneur, having launched several ventures such as Drip and Dry cleaners, and Mars Beauty Supply Store, showing how one can combine innovation with social impact. Her insights today will bring a unique blend of legal expertise, strategic thinking, and human-centered leadership. So she will talk to us about how to avoid burnout, fatigue, and stress in the course of our duties, and the importance of mental health and caring about ourselves. Karibu sana, Miss Mariam.
Thank you, Angela. I like listening to when they're being introduced. I keep smiling. Okay, thank you. And everybody on call, good afternoon, good morning, good evening, wherever you're tuning from. Happy Women's Day to the ladies. And thank you, the East Africa Law Society, for inviting me. I'm so humbled, and for convening such an important conversation. I'm truly honored to be part of it. When we ask women how they sustain their high professional performance without compromising our mental health, it is something that I deeply recognize, because across, we are looking at women taking up spaces. They have entered leadership positions. We are now serving at the bench, all the way to the Supreme Court. We are managing firms, boards, companies. We are now even presidents of countries. So such we have conquered. However, these spaces were built on structures of yesterday. They don't hold the reality of a woman. So when you go out there, you're still operating in an environment that requires a high levels of endurance, constant availability, the silent burdens, and high expectations, among others. So today I find myself in a very interesting moment and happy to address the how part. We hold the titles, but the architecture has largely remained the same. How do we then thrive? I'll look at it on two fronts, on a personal level and institutional, and also on an institutional level. On a personal level, sustaining high professional performance will require somebody to look inwards. We have to do a cleanup of our minds as we enter into these spaces and these institutions we represent. Often we carry our inner selves, that inner child. In psychology, we usually call it the inner child. So the need to carry constantly, to prove ourselves, fear of failure. Some people have a high level to be perfect, to exceed expectations. So some of those we carry along our emotional experiences, and importantly, our childhood experiences. So if you grow up and as an adult, you haven't dealt with the inner child, your inner mind, and your inner self, half the time that young girl will always come to the surface. And sometimes we've seen people say, oh, when women are in positions of power, oh, they're too emotional, they're too much. But it's because without knowing, you carry that inner child. So I usually want to really tell people to lean in on therapy. Before you occupy certain spaces, go and know who you are. Show up for therapy on the one-to-one. Some of them, they say, oh, at our workplaces, we have mental health. People come and talk to us, but mental health is wide. You might be talking to a motivational speaker and you've never dealt with your inner issues. So such things, if they are not addressed, you can end up in a more traumatic environment and fail to sustain yourself professionally, and you fail to actually be able to understand the internal patterns and why you exist in that space. So sustaining has a lot to do with showing up your full, authentic adult self. Another thing I would like to speak about us as women and everybody tuned in is boundary setting. As women, we are nurturers. Many of us, from where we come from, some are firstborn children, Some have a lot to prove, depending on how you're raised again. So some of those, we end up being, those traits, when not addressed, we don't know how to set our boundaries. So when we show up, we want people to think we are dependable, we are accommodating, and constantly we make ourselves very available. An example, you find that a highly capable woman will be on the laptop, having 2 phones, trying to be everything to everybody. But in my experience, and after talking to so many people, I find that such burdens and responsibilities, without setting boundaries for yourself, you find yourself unable to sustain. And that way, we burn and crash. So it is very key to set boundaries, and competence usually exists fully when you know your pressure points. So that is another thing that it's very good for every woman to be aware of, especially somebody running their business or in any position of leadership. There is also another skill that I continue to practice, is emotional regulation. The high performance environment that we exist, they involve a lot of high pressure, deadlines, criticisms, difficult conversations, high stake decisions. So without emotional regulations, personally, you look back, like when doing your own work, I'll speak for myself. Some of the cases you are handling can trigger you. You may be handling a situation, a divorce situation, or a situation that involves a child. And that child is exactly the age of your child. But because you haven't exercised or developed your regulation emotionally, you find yourself being triggered. And without knowing, you allow your professionalism may pause and you show up differently. And people will think, oh, maybe you're wishy-washy or you're on and off, but it's because you don't know how to regulate yourself. And that becomes an issue and a problem that can affect your mental wellness and eventually how you show up in your leadership positions. So it is very important to ensure that you regulate yourself emotionally. And while these personal practices are important, and individual resilience and what have you, a key point is recognizing the institutions we serve. Like I said, most of these are already hinged on our patriarchy platform. So as women, we have to be more aware and recognize the psychological demands of high performance. So that is on the institutional level. High performance professionals usually work in, like lawyers. Let me give an example of ourselves. We usually absorb a lot of technical problems. And you find yourself that law firms, we move as we go. I mean, you're from the LDC, you think you have it all figured out. And we that advise other people seldom advise ourselves. So you find yourself that so many lawyers in their law firms, they even lack a policy of wellness. They don't know, they measure performance on how many cases are you closing, how many clients are you meeting, and are we winning cases? That's all they're bothered about. But institutionally, you have to be aware of and measure performance differently. If, for example, you recognize that these women that I send to these cases, they are also in doing a lot of supervision of interns. Back then we were not doing interns of 3rd year or 4th year law schools, but you find a law firm that has interns, they have those from Law Development Center, they have those that are still in law school. So you are measuring this person who has to go to court, has to supervise the interns, and you're not looking at their performance on a broader perspective. So if you are still measuring KPIs on performance, you may lose other aspects of talent building, and such a professional will sink in burnout. So the burning out is expected from a leadership position. As leaders, what have you put in place to support your teams, and how are you measuring your teams? Are you putting their wellness at the core? Are you seeing to it that they are getting the mental health support they need? So as a strategist, I would call upon ourselves to check ourselves in our various institutions. Also, there's redesigning performance culture. That is also embedded in there. Excellence shouldn't mean permanent exhaustion, shouldn't mean hours of standing, hours of judgment. However, best institution practice should be looked at on protecting. We should learn to protect, we should learn to regulate, we should learn to pace ourselves, and we should learn to produce results that encompass all the above. So another key thing that we should do is to normalize our mental health conversations. That I cannot say loud enough. Institutions have started. You find people who are saying, oh, we are being offered insurance, our wellness, our insurer is talking to us mentally, but there's a difference between the spectrum of mental health that exists. Everybody is talking so much. You hear mental health, but it's so broad and it's so big. Personally, I am a registered trauma-informed practitioner, and I deal with the trauma in individuals. So you find somebody thinks that they have to approach that from a group setup, and they miss out on the one-to-ones. So in our environments and work positions and the areas that we serve, we need to give our employees one-to-one consultations. They benefit a lot from a bigger perspective than just taking things broadly. Oh, mental health. They have talked to us. Most of us and most of them could be motivational speakers, and they are advocating for mental health without addressing your inner demons. So in professional environments, and particularly with many of our societies, strength is often associated with silence. We are strong when these days, keep quiet, be silent, be silent. You don't have to talk about everything, but mental health does not protect that. It's good to talk to somebody, and gradually it will erode what you're absorbing internally. So when we ask how women can sustain high professional performance without compromising their mental health, the answer lies in those two places. At the personal level, women must invest in inner healing, strong boundaries, and emotional regulation. These internal practices will allow professionals to perform with a strength while protecting their mental well-being. So at institutions, I still call upon organizations to evolve beyond structures they are built, to have a woman at the back of their head when building, to normalize these conversations, that we don't just advocate, let us put breastfeeding rooms for them, but let's have rooms where they can have one-to-one therapy. And that way we shall sustain our excellence in those places that we serve, and we don't need to be less ambitious. So thank you so much. I'll stop my conversation at that and wait for the Q&A. And thank you, Angela, and the ELS for this platform. Over to you.
Wow, wow, wow. Thank you for bringing to light how broad, you have really highlighted how people throw around the term mental health, but what is this mental health? Thank you for breaking it down for us. Members, remember, if you have a question, we shall have a Q&A session after all the speakers have spoken, but you can put it on the Q&A section. And I am seeing that we have some very global audience. We have someone joining in from Lusaka, Zambia, and all of you, karibuni sana. Now, let us shift gears to the final pillar of this conversation, and that is giving innovation. For this one, Ms. Catherine Kariuki Mulika will take us through this particular pillar. She's a leading technology and innovation lawyer based in Nairobi, Kenya. She is a co-founder of Cavendries, WAM Advocates LLP, and Africa Privacy and Legal, which specializes in telecoms, fintech, data protection, intellectual property, and emerging technologies. With over 15 years of experience, Catherine has shaped digital law and policy across Africa, engaging with regulators, policymakers, and industry leaders. She is a recognized thought leader, having been named by the Chamber's global leading fintech lawyer for 4 years straight, that is from 2020 to 2024. She has been included in the Business Daily Top 40 Under 40 Women in Kenya, that was in 2018. And recently she was recognized by Courtroom Mail 100, and this was in 2025. She currently serves as the Deputy Chair of the East Africa Law Society Intellectual Property Committee, and she sits on advisory boards for tech and privacy associations. She's committed to advancing Africa's digital transformation through legal innovation and strategic capacity building. Her presentation today will offer cutting-edge perspectives on the intersection of law, technology, and policy. Over to you, Ms. Catherine. Take us to new frontiers of AI, ESG, and the future of the law. Ms.
Thank you,
Catherine.
Angie. Good afternoon, everyone. And thank you, Angie. Thank you, ELS, for convening this very important topic today. I had my notebook out as my fellow panelists were speaking, and I have to say there were a lot of thought-provoking things that were mentioned. So thank you to my panelists for those thought-provoking and insightful presentations. For today is a great day. I have a very technical task, but I only have 15 minutes. I was allocated 15 minutes, so I'll try and see what I can cover in these 15 minutes. And what I'll try to do mostly is to also trigger thoughts. There isn't much deep diving that we can do, but I'll try and cover as much to just trigger thoughts to our speakers and see, so that post this webinar, they're able to figure out or think about how our conversations affect their practice and their daily lives, and then figure out a way forward for themselves. And as I said, thank you to the panelists for laying a strong foundation. So what I'll be doing in my presentation is I'll try and build on all of what my previous panelists have provided. And I'll do that by focusing on the innovation aspect. Because at the end of the day, we all know that opportunity is visibility, and opportunity, visibility, and care really are what allows women to step into the front, the frontier, work, and stay there. And so my topic on innovation is I'll cover women frontiers, women are lawyers at the frontiers of AI, ESG, and I'll also cover the future of law. So let's start by innovation. So when most people hear innovation, they think of tech, apps, gadgets, coding. But in this session, that's not what I mean. Innovation for lawyers in this context is changing how we practice as lawyers so that we stay relevant, useful, trusted, and influential in a world, in a revolving world, and now in a world that keeps getting distracted. And in this context, AI, ESG expectations, and maybe even, like I dare say, tougher regulators. The regulators also keep evolving. So when I talk of innovation, that's what I mean. Forget thinking about the apps and the gadgets and the tech. I mean changing as practice changes, and how do we stay useful as women practitioners and women in-house lawyers, and align with that. And the reason why this matters on this International Women's Day is simple. Power is built by people who shape the rules of the new economy. That's a fact, right? And so if women lawyers are not shaping those rules, then we'll be stuck doing what I'd call low value work while others take the high value work that influence mandates. So then one big reality check for the profession is that AI is already doing some work that junior lawyers used to do. Let's say drafting, summarizing, doing the initial research and turning notes into documents, turning documents into notes. That's a fact. So then that means that the market is shifting. The market as we know, the legal market as we know it is shifting. And clients will now, are already, and will continue to pay less for time spent producing words, simple documents, and really more for judgment, strategy, and risk control. Those of us who are external practitioners in law firms have already experienced this as in-house lawyers keep demanding more and more of practitioners from a business perspective, where they keep saying, we want you to be more of a strategic partner as a lawyer, as opposed to the traditional lawyer who would just sit, wait for instructions, and then say what the law provides and then give a yes and no. Now more and more they're demanding that, you come in as a strategic partner where we expect you to understand the business model and the business strategy so that you align with that and then now give us solutions that are based on that, which means they're relying more and more on the external lawyer for judgment, strategy, and risk control. And I dare say the in-house lawyer, that's the same expectation that the business has come to expect as in-house lawyers. So this means it keeps evolving. And how do you position yourself as a lawyer? In the fact that it's evolving, I want us first of all to look at it. It's not bad news, It's always an opportunity, and that's how you should always look at it. With new emerging areas, new emerging practice areas, always look at them as opportunities. And really, at the end of the day, lawyers who can guide organizations through, let's say, AI and ESG risk are and will always be in demand. So women lawyers can lead here because the frontier is not about being, say, the loudest person in the room. It's about being the most trusted. Can the client, can the business, can the entity trust you to propel them forward and for them to rely on you? So then you ask yourself as a woman lawyer, what must I give in order to get to where you're talking about? I'll keep it so simple. So to gain power, purpose, and progress in this new legal landscape, you must give at least 3 things. First of all, bring your curiosity. And I'm not talking of curiosity as a personality. I'm talking of curiosity as a discipline. So for example, each week, learn one practical thing about AI and ESG that changes legal risk. Learn one new term. Expose yourself to one case or conduct one case or one matter internally. And identify one client problem. By a client problem, I mean maybe an existing gap. If you already serve clients, just look out and identify one gap which you can help the client assess and come up with solutions for. So that's the first. You bring curiosity to the table. Secondly, bring courage. Courage to take on new work. Courage to take on additional work. In your case, it might be additional work, not only new kind of work, but additional work. So don't wait to be invited into, say, AI projects within your organization, tech procurement projects, data incident projects, ESG due diligence projects. Put your hand up, own a piece of it, right? So you brought curiosity to the table, and curiosity, we talked about, it was discipline. Then now you bring courage to the table. And then the third thing is governance. And I believe governance is really our superpower as women. Governance is putting rules, controls, and records around new things so that they don't explode later. So governance is where you as a lawyer would become indispensable. And to further just explain on AI or artificial intelligence in simple terms and what lawyers do about it, now to just dive a bit better, more and more organizations are using AI in three main ways. One, to support internal work. And to support internal work, we are talking the drafting documents, summarizing documents, preparing reports, reviewing contracts. More and more organizations are leveraging in this in order to harness efficiencies. Secondly, apart from supporting internal work, more and more entities out there are harnessing AI to help make decisions. We're talking about HR departments now. It's very common to find them using AI tools for hiring, performance management. Lending institutions and banks more and more use AI for customer scoring, for making credit decisions. Those who practice within AML for fraud detection, more and more lending institutions and financial institutions use AI for fraud detection. And so the first one was supporting internal work. Then now they use AI to help make decisions. They also use AI for external facing of public facing, I'd say responsibilities or duties or functions. So for example, like chatbots, most of us have interacted with chatbots a lot. Behind these chatbots, they're leveraging on AI and customer service. There's the automated responses. So most entities are also leveraging on this to just harness on efficiencies. And you'll find the first level of support, most entities have harnessed on AI tools to provide these services like what I've mentioned, chatbots, customer service, and automated responses. So then with that in mind and you understanding how entities are harnessing on AI, then you work backwards and ask yourself, okay, as a lawyer, where does a gap exist and where does a legal risk sit so that now I can help the entity, I can come in and work with the entity and help the entity figure out how to move forward. Or after identifying the gaps, what's the solution on mitigating whatever risks are there. So the common legal risk that we see that sit in what I've mentioned and use of AI. So first, there is the element of bias and discrimination risk. Then there's privacy and data use risk. There's confidentiality and leak risk. There is cybersecurity risk. There is accountability risk. Like who is responsible when the tool causes harm and things like that. You'll find there are laws where, for example, laws around automated decision-making that require, a human has to interact with the system, even where people harness AI. When it comes to privacy and data use risk, you'll find there are laws that are very clear on, say, data breaches and what people are supposed to do, what safeguards, security and safeguards are supposed to be there, technical and organizational safeguards that are supposed to be there to start with, in order for the organization to be said to be compliant, and what happens in case of data breaches. So once you work backwards, then you can see the legal positions or the gaps that exist where you as a lawyer who has now decided to take up these new emerging areas can fit yourself and harness for yourself a new practice area and be able to provide these services to either your existing client or new client. So then the question that I get asked all the time by new lawyers is, okay, so then what do we do as lawyers given this? So of course, as lawyers, we don't need to code, we don't need to go that technical, but what we need to do for our clients is to ask the right questions early. Remember, the client at all times is trying to tell you, come, and this is our strategy. We want to roll out this product at the end of the day. We don't want you to tell us no. We want you to figure out how we can navigate these gray areas and still be able to launch. We don't want to get into problem with the regulators or the law, and therefore you need to mitigate that risk in whatever way possible. So then that means when you work backward as a lawyer, when these products or tools are being deployed, then you ask the right questions early and make sure that the organization can always prove and document its answers later. So when the regulator comes calling, when that complaint comes your way, then your client is able to answer the questions and is able to mitigate its exposure. So for example, this starts by, you can create a simple checklist, when you're trying to support your client. So it will be the simple things like a checklist that just asks the client a list of questions that helps you be able to figure out the next steps. So for example, who owns the AI use case? What data is being used, and is there consent? Is it allowed? How is the decision checked by a human if it affects people, that is? What testing has been done on this product, especially for AI tools to cover the bias and accuracy bits? What records will we keep as an entity so that we explain the decision later to a regulator, a court, or a customer? What does the contract say? For example, if a vendor is involved on issues of like confidentiality, security, liability, what is the incidents plan if something goes wrong? As a lawyer, you see, you guide your client towards all these aspects. But you see, to guide them through all these aspects, you need to have done at least a bit of homework and a bit of reading, a bit of capacity building for you to be able to understand and be able to guide them. And at the end of the day, like one of the mottos that we always operate with when we're guiding clients through these projects is, if you can't explain it, control it, or prove it, then you shouldn't deploy it. And that way it mitigates, it always mitigates the client's exposures. So that's AI in a nutshell. Then the other thing, let's look at ESG in simple terms and what lawyers can do about it. So I know you've heard of this term, ESG.
Catherine.
Sorry?
ESG in like 5 minutes.
Okay, so let's look at ESG. Okay, I'll try and cover it quickly. So let's look at ESG in simple terms. I don't know, people say ESG all the time and it sounds big and vague, but let's make it simple. So ESG is people, planet, and purpose, right? But in legal work, ESG is evidence, yeah? At the end of the day, that's how we think of it as lawyers. So the most common mistakes is your clients or organizations will make big statements in marketing and reports, but really they can't prove them. And that always creates a legal risk. So the main ESG risks that you flag are things like misleading claims, human rights issues, weak governance, weak reporting, technology and data risks, because cyber incidents and harmful digital systems are now real social and operational risks. So then what you do as a lawyer practicing in ESG is you're always expected to turn ESG promises into enforceable commitments and proof. You ask yourselves the same questions that the checklist that I put out for AI is the same one that I would use for ESG. And at the end of the day, as you support your clients, always keep reminding them that ESG is not what you say, it's what you can prove. And how does ESG and AI connect? They look like different topics, but they really connect in one place. Both force organizations to answer the same question, like, can you show responsible decision-making with proof? And that's where women lawyers can lead, yeah. Because it's not just about hype, it's really about governance, accountability, and trust. It takes me back to there. And therefore, the future is not lawyers versus AI. And I know you've had this debate so many times about, is AI going to replace lawyers? So the future is not lawyers versus AI, but it's really lawyers who use AI properly and govern risk versus the lawyers who ignore it. And as women lawyers, we'd really gain power when we become the people that clients trust, build simple frameworks and templates that teams can actually use, train others and build strong teams. You can't afford to be a lone hero. Train others and build strong teams. Sponsor other women into high-value mandates and not only mentor them. And really, if your organization or firm becomes known for handling technology incidents calmly or running a strong tech team and an ESG diligence team, then you end up attracting better work and better roles. And really, this is how influence is built. Let me close with this. Innovation is not about, I'll repeat again, innovation is not about being the most technical lawyer in the room. It's really about being the lawyer who makes new things safe, fair, and defensible. And on this International Women's Day, I'd really like to challenge us not just to participate in the future of law, but let's shape it. Ask yourself, how are you shaping the future of law? And let us be the lawyers who build the rules, safeguards, and proof. Angie, I'm going to stop there since I know I'm time bound. I could have gone on and on and on, but I'm looking forward to interacting with the participants in the Q&A section.
Thank you very much, Catherine. We could listen to you all day, but unfortunately, we are constrained with time. Members, I think our panelists have done the topic justice. Ms. Florida reminded us that we need to start early. We need to start mentoring and having these conversations early because women go through various seasons. And once we start these conversations, we start empowering our women early, we are going to avoid some trauma. Ms. Wall reminded us that we need to start a revolution and we need to be unapologetic about it. Even as we are being visible, we need to be a sister's keeper. Ms. Mariam reminded us one very key aspect, that excellence should not really mean permanent exhaustion. And she gave us very good tips on how to avoid that. And she also emphasized on the importance of therapy. You know, people think that only insane people, only people with very big problems need therapy, but therapy can also be just a conversation to let some of these frustrations and some of the emotions that we carry, to let them out so that we can regulate our emotions. And of course, Ms. Catherine has reminded us that innovation is not just about being the most tech-savvy lawyer. It is being able to change with the times, because the change always brings an opportunity. Now, if you have a question, you can raise your hand so that you can ask it live. Our panelists are here. As you are thinking, I know we are internalizing what we have just been told, and we are really thinking about all those nuggets of wisdom that we have been given by our very eminent speakers. As we think about the question to ask, you can also make a comment or an observation. I can see Kasichana Mumba has said that this session feels like she's in the room with older sisters, aunties, and mentors who are giving her warm hugs and holding her hand. Oh, and she says her eyes are actually tearing up. This is what we aim to do. We are glad that it has this profound effect on you. As we are thinking about the question, we have in our presence one gentleman who really supports everything ELS, everything women lawyers. And this is none other than the batonia of the Rwanda Bar Association, Mr. Moise Nkundarabashi. I hope I have not massacred your name. Batonia, please unmute and greet us. We are very honored to have you in this session. Batonia?
Thank you very much.
I only had one word and then you disappeared. Batonia, if you're speaking, we can't hear you.
Can you hear me?
Yes, now we can.
So thank you very much, Angela, for this opportunity. I've been sitting in my room and listening to these great conversations. And I want to commend the work that is being done by the South African Law Society. And I would like to thank the panelists for their insightful presentations, starting from Florida, Fiona, Catherine. They are really insightful conversations. March is a very important month as we celebrate the International Women's Day. And at Rwanda Bar Association, we are also doing a lot to make sure that we promote female advocates. But of course, we still have a long way to go. We have not reached where we want to be. I've been working very closely with Florida in a good number of initiatives to make sure that we promote female advocates, be it in leadership, be it in building their capacities, and so on and so on. And I'm very happy to see that the conversation is now turning regional. And I want to believe this is just the beginning. We have a long way to go ahead, but we still believe we are on the right journey. At the Bar Association in Rwanda, we are now happy to report that we raised from 7 female advocates up to 359 for the past 29 years. And these female advocates are also taking part into the leadership of the Bar Association. We now count 6 out of 13 council members in the bar governing council. The disciplinary committee now counts 5 female advocates out of 11 members. At the secretariat, we are happy to report that we have 15 employees, and 6 of them are female. And when we look at the other aspects, like the bar representation at the level of the East African Law Society and other positions of leadership, we are very intentional about it, and we've been represented by male and female advocate for the past close to 15 years. And all these are policies that we put in place to make sure that we promote ladies and make sure that we build a bar association that does not leave anyone behind. On the other side, what I can say is we are happy to be with this committee at the East African Law Society, and we will continue in this endeavor to make sure that female advocates are not left behind in as far as legal practice is concerned. Other topics that were discussed, like the use of AI, it's really something that is ongoing, that is being discussed around in the legal profession. But the good news that I always tell people whenever I get the opportunity to talk about AI is like a calculator, and it's here to stay. It's not going anywhere. But guess what? It's not something that people should fear, because AI has no ethics, AI has no integrity, but AI can help you do the work that you are supposed to be doing in a week and do it within 2 or 3 days. So those are a few things that I wanted to share. And I want to thank very much Angela for giving me the opportunity. I want to believe this is just the beginning of the conversation that we will continue as we move along and promote female advocates to be at a level where their brothers are. I thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Batonia, for always supporting us, for always showing up. And it just goes to show that we cannot have this conversation with just women only. We have to work with our brothers in the profession, and we have to work with our brothers in the society so that we can elevate all the women advocates. And then with that, we are going to have a much better society. Looking at the Q&A section, there are no questions. I'm not seeing any hands up. So we'll go back to our panelists for them to give us some final thoughts. We start with you, Florida.
Yes, give me a second to get my video running. Thank you again, Angela, for this opportunity, and thank you to ELS for having these conversations. And thank you to all my fellow panelists. I have learned a thing or two from all of you. Just final thoughts. There are places and spaces we go into that other women don't go into. Just make sure that as a representative of women, we carry ourselves with the confidence to know that we have the capacity and we deserve to be in those spaces, but also to make sure that we get our fellow women into those spaces and whatever knowledge we've acquired, whatever responsibilities that we have, make sure that we use them for the benefit of all of us. Thank you again. And happy Women's Day.
Thank you very much, Florida, for those thoughts. Ms. Fiona, Senior Counsel. Final thoughts, Ms. Fiona, Senior Counsel.
Nobody can hear me, please.
Yes, we can hear you.
I want to thank everybody. Mr. President, it's a pleasure to see you online. I did question, but I do not think that that is because maybe people are not inspired. I want to thank the speakers. I've learned so much. I've been taking some notes. Thank you, Mariam. I think that Mariam should give us all a session on mental health. Catherine, thank you. Thank you, everybody that was speaking. Thank you, Angela, for the leadership. The last thing I want to say is, if you are a woman in a place of influence, and when I say place of influence, as long as you have somebody, because we influence horizontally, we influence vertically, both upwards and downwards. We need to make space for ourselves, create space for ourselves by being visible. We need to create space for others by sponsoring them, by being that voice in the room. Somebody purpose that this year you're going to be that voice in a room that will just open a door for another woman, whether younger or older than you. Purpose to make room for others. And then, life will just automatically make room for you. I think that sponsorship also increases visibility. I'll never forget the first time I ran for the Uganda Law Society secretary position. Nobody knew me. I had been in a PR position somewhere else, and I hadn't practiced law for about 2 years actively. And then I come back to the Law Society and I ran for this position, and 15 people showed up that day. And how are you? You were a lecturer years ago, taught us law years ago, and because of that, we have come to. So sometimes when you are mentoring and investing in people, you think it's about them, but sometimes you are creating room for yourself. So build your influence, build your visibility, but do not forget that you're working for a legacy. Therefore, make sure that everything you invest in your profile is also poured out into another being. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Ms. Fiona Wall, Senior Counsel, for still inspiring us, even with your final thoughts. Ms. Mariam, parting shot.
Thank you, Angela. My parting shots will be very simple. I believe as we push for more women to rise into leadership, we must also ensure that the systems they enter allow them to sustain excellence without sacrificing their well-being. Because the goal is not simply for women to arrive at the top. The goal is for us to remain there, healthy, impactful, and able to lead for the long term. So when women are supported both internally and structurally, they don't merely survive, they thrive and transform the spaces they occupy for generations and generations to come. So thank you, and thank you for the leadership at the East Africa Law Society. Thank you, my fellow panelists.
Karibu sana, Mariam, and you have really demystified this issue of mental health and what it actually entails. Over to you, Miss Catherine, for your parting shot.
Thank you, Angie. So on my part is to first of all thank my fellow panelists. As I said before, I have learned a lot and also been thought triggered a lot. And also thank you to our audience for staying with us throughout the session. Thank you, Batonier, for your support, never-ending support. I think it means a lot for us, for you to show up on this day and support our initiative. Maybe for my parting shot is just to emphasize what I had provided earlier. The challenge to everybody that I'd like to put out forward is stay curious, lift your hands, be brave enough to lift your hands and volunteer for something. Use what you already have as a lawyer. Be disciplined around issues of governance, evidence, and accountability, and do something new every week or every month. Learn something new, and don't be afraid. Be brave and be courageous. That's my parting shot. Thank you very much. Angie, back to you.
Thank you very much, Catherine, for giving us that challenge, especially that one for being curious and learning something new. You have reminded us that we should use curiosity as a discipline. Thank you very much to our panelists. I'm looking at the chat section and I can see that we don't have a question there. You know, that could be a good thing or a bad thing. It means that either they got everything or they got nothing, but we have a very stellar audience and everyone is just really, really ruminating on what we have been told, because a lot has been said and it was a very thought-provoking conversation. So members, remember to follow us on our socials. By us, I mean the East African Law Society. There are a lot of things that are happening, and there are normally webinars by the ELS on various topics run by the various committees. So there's a lot that you can learn even from joining this webinar. So if you are wondering what to do when you have learned so many new things and you think there's nothing more to learn, if you follow us on our socials, you will see that there are very many diverse topics, because we try to add value to all our members. So again, the socials for the East African Law Society on X, it is East African Law Society in brackets EALS. On LinkedIn, it is East African Law Society in brackets official. On Facebook, it is East African Law Society, and the YouTube channel is the East Africa Law Society. Please follow us to keep yourself updated on what is happening. Again, let me take this opportunity to thank all of us who have joined this webinar. It has been very, very enlightening. You know, sometimes we see some of these topics and you wonder, now, give to gain. What can come out of that? And I know we have left here very, very informed, inspired, and ready to go forth to give, so that we can all gain. With that, allow me to also thank the Secretariat based in Arusha who put together this, Gabriel and team, of course, led by the indefatigable David Sigano. Thank you for putting together this session and event, for gathering all of us here. So with those few remarks, please have yourself a very, very, very happy Women's Day. And remember, March is the entire month is for celebrating achievements that have been made by women. Let us keep the peace and be good out there, and we stay inspired. With that, please do have yourselves a lovely rest of the day. Once again, happy Women's Day.
Hi, Angela.
Happy Women's Day, ladies. Goodbye.